You're listening to the Monday Night Community Show with Daniel on BRFM.
This is the Daniel Monday Night Community Show on demand through YouTube. Thank you very much for choosing to listen to us through this method. If you'd like to keep up to date with when I add new interviews, then subscribe to this channel.
We present Tears of the Devil by John Fryer with Nigel Peaver, Richard Graylin, Jeff Bainham and Robin Ingram as the banker. The play is set in a fictional White House in the early years of the 21st century. Episode 2.
General, I am authorized to tell you to ready your men for immediate action as soon as the deadline has passed. And the executive orders are signed from the National Security Authority. We're almost there.
Everything is going according to schedule. It is now only a matter of time.
Diplomacy is almost at an end. We will be able to go within the next 7 days.
Time, it is said, waits for no one. Now, this is true. The momentum of an event is usually unrecognized by the citizens of the world. Like the slipping of snow down a mountain, the world turns, slowly, almost imperceptibly, but as the movement of the frozen water gathers in speed, the people look back to see the avalanche rushing towards them, wondering how the whole thing started in the first place, but totally unable to avoid its impact.
Syria is now in material breach of international law. Only Russia in the Security Council continues to object to our use of military action, but we're leaking the details of their financial connections to the regime in Damascus in the first editions tomorrow morning. The deployment of resources is now established in the minds of the public, and no one, at least openly in the media, is questioning where all our troops suddenly came from. Overall, Mr. President, everything is going pretty well. We should be ready to move in as little as 24 hours.
The stock value of the Jupiter Shipping Company and its subsidiary companies fell like a stone after the sinking of the Ocean Spirit.
I'm sure they did, Mr. President.
I have a report here on my desk from the Central Intelligence Agency, who, as I'm sure you are aware, monitors all market transactions in up-to-the-minute real time.
I was aware of that, sir.
Yeah. Large amounts of put options were placed on Jupiter stock only 72 hours before the Ocean Spirit was sent to the bottom of the Atlantic.
Somebody did well.
Indeed.
Do you know who?
Brian T. Jones.
The DDI.
Who you recommended for the position of Deputy Director of Intelligence.
And you appointed, Mr. President.
Did he place the put options for you?
Is that what you think?
Did he?
And how many of those options have been cashed, sir?
I don't know. No one will reveal who made those trades.
And no one ever will, sir.
Did you know?
You're dealing with adults, Mr. President.
Did you know?
You are dealing with people.
Did you know in advance?
The forces that run this country are adults, Mr. President. Adults that the rest of the country doesn't need to know anything about. Adults that the majority of the country don't want to know anything about. The country is not yet ready to contemplate the idea that this may have been known about in advance. They are simply not yet ready. Till they are, the answer must of course be no.
And if the press should put two and two together?
Then I'd take a good look at who else knew that war was on the horizon, and who else might have placed put options on the Jupiter Shipping Company and its subsidiaries. Then ask yourself who's really motivated to tell the American people the truth. Is anyone? Are you?
Give me one good reason why I don't just pick up the phone and sort this out with the Russians.
There is absolutely nothing to stop you, sir. except that you would be seen to have capitulated to Moscow in the eyes of the American public. If you make that call, Mr. President, we might as well start looking for our next jobs right now, because I can tell you for certain that the election will already be lost, and we will go down in history as one of the weakest administrations this country will have ever known.
Answer me a question.
If I can, sir.
We have millions without health care, schools falling down, and people in our country that struggle to get enough to eat every day. Why are there always dollars for war when our own are going without?
Because war sends trillions of dollars through the economy, and social issues do not. People can become more afraid of someone they've never met, while their neighbor goes hungry, feels unsafe, and goes cold in the winter.
What about the human desire to do good in the world?
I've never seen any evidence of such a thing, Mr. President. Things happen in the world as they have always happened because of financial considerations. And the fact that we may secretly hope for good to triumph over evil is, I am saddened to say, simply not the case.
Then what hope for humanity, Mr. Secretary? I wonder if this is how Roosevelt must have been feeling, knowing that he would soon be dropping the bomb on Hiroshima.
Truman, sir.
What?
It was President Truman who dropped the atomic bomb, sir.
No, it wasn't. It was Roosevelt. He was the one who was planning to do it. Truman was the one who got the excuse to do it, as Japan refused to surrender. But we were going to do it anyway. I wonder who I have provided the excuse for.
President Roosevelt did what he had to do, sir. So will you.
Tell me when everything is in place.
Yes, Mr. President.
The European Parliament, the Arab League, the Organization of American States, the African Union, the United Nations, and others. Each one a government above national governments, each one clear and plain before the eyes of the world. But what if the world's public ever considered that there might be a government above even those, that was not open and plain for all to see, a government whose hand was felt in every corner of the world, but never acknowledged?
We have received considerable up-to-the-minute intelligence from numerous sources that have given us a large confidence factor of information about the preparedness of the Syrian people to rise up against the current regime. Intelligence reports from both the CIA and DIA confirm groups of expatriates from the Syrian government apparatus preparing to re-enter Syrian territory and provide an advance guard of sorts for us on the ground.
Is it factored into the TPFDL?
The deployment list can accommodate it, and for anything else that comes in from intelligence sources.
What sort of intelligence sources?
Satellite imagery, communications and surveillance, the usual sort, Mr. President.
What I meant was sources on the ground.
We have those too, sir.
Could you tell me about any of those?
Mohammed Said, Abdul bin Aziz, Ali Kibran.
Those are not sources.
Mr. President.
They're defectors. People who left Syria, people who could not stand President Bashar's father and ran from the country swearing vengeance and telling the world that one day they'd be back.
They were highly influential men in their country.
Who now have virtually no standing with their own people who stayed. Your list of sources were only ever anyone so long as they could stand up and shout, "Look at my country's human rights record." Remove that government from Damascus, and what will those guys do all day?
Get a proper job?
We don't need cynicism right now, Carl.
Really, David? Is that why the INR are being kept out of the daily intelligence briefings? The very briefings that state usually receives during a time of conflict? Briefings that might shed a little extra light on the Sudan prison bombing and the loss of this oil tanker, not that anyone's saying they're connected. Not that anyone's saying it.
Those briefings are of no interest to the State Department's Bureau of Intelligence and Research.
My people think they are.
Let's stop the interdepartmental rivalry, and let's stop it now. David, tell Carl's people whatever is relevant to them. And Carl, tell State to be a little more understanding of the need for secrecy, as it looks like we're going to have to fulfill the UN mandate and walk our own road to Damascus.
I am speaking to you on board the USS St. Louis, currently stationed in the Mediterranean. All morning, the captain and crew of the St. Louis have been running mock attack drills as part of its offense and defense strategies. Added to that, defensive action against Syria and possibly Russian reprisals, and you have a 21st century battleship ready and expecting to experience combat in the very near future indeed. With increasing numbers of coalition troops now massing on the Iraqi-Syrian border, as well as the truly staggering tonnage of naval firepower now concentrated in this portion of the world, it seems only a matter of time before a battle of frightening intensity could begin. And with negotiations now firmly ended in the UN, which failed to bring about any successful resolution to this international dispute, military action seems now all but inevitable.
I've just heard that the Syrian ambassador is back in the mural room.
Some people never know when to call it quits. Never mind. Let him wait. What you got?
This just went out on the wire. The Associated Press picked this up off the net. When the first bomb falls on Damascus, Joe Griffiths will be executed, live on camera to an audience of millions. This will be all over CNN for days. The people will scream for blood. They'll want us to blast Syria back to the Stone Age.
Stop the innocent act. You know why this nation is going to war. Presidents get to pretend ignorance so the people can feel better about themselves when they are lied to. But that's not the case with us. We have to make the tough decisions so he doesn't have to know. And therefore, can't let slip the truth. I know what's going on, and so do you, so don't pretend otherwise.
A large group of protesters gathered early this morning outside the Syrian embassy, demanding the handing over of the terrorist suspects believed to be behind the sinking of the British oil tanker Ocean Spirit. Trouble began at about 12 this afternoon, although the cause of the disturbance is unclear. But with feelings running high over what many now see as Syrians stalling over this issue, it was almost unavoidable that violence at some stage would be directed against Syrian establishments around the world. The call for justice from the victims' families has become almost deafening in the light of both the British and the American intelligence reports that Syria was shielding those believed responsible. The morale of the people is now firmly behind the actions of the British government, and there is little appetite for compromise on the streets in either London or Washington.
Mr. President?
President Townsend.
Yes.
I have the attack orders that need your signature, sir.
I'm not signing them.
It's totally legal, Mr. President. Under the War Powers Resolution and Joint Resolution passed by Congress in 2001. Sign the orders, Mr. President.
I do not believe in this war of yours, David.
The commercial build-up, Mr. President,
I do not care what the cost in financial terms is, David. I care about the cost in human lives.
They sank an oil tanker in international waters.
Why?
What?
Why?
Sir, at midnight tonight, the deadline will have passed.
They knew we would respond. We would have to be seen to respond. So why open themselves up to reprisals that would surely come?
The mind of the Arab leader is
no different from that of a Western leader, or any other leader anywhere on the face of the planet, only some of us have bigger and better security apparatus.